In a recent alarming incident, a pilot was reportedly found to be under the influence of some prohibited stimulant before operating a flight. This raises significant concerns about the critical issue of sobriety within the aviation industry. To delve deeper into this matter, we're joined now by Desmond Latham, an aviation specialist and CEO at Fray Intermedia. Desmond, good morning and thank you very much for your time. You know, when I read this article, I was absolutely shocked and quickly remembered Anton Lubitz. I don't know if you also remember him, that pilot from Lufthansa Airways who was so depressed he deliberately crashed a plane with 144 passengers into the French Alps back in 2015. I think that was probably the last time we talked about pilots' mental health or sobriety. What did you make of this recent story?
Yeah, I remember that. Well, unfortunately, that was the German wings crash, which was an extraordinary moment in aviation, actually changed aviation significantly. So a number of things took place after that. And I'm afraid to say there have been some incidents since then. There's an East China Airways crash, I think 2 years ago, or the beginning of 2022, which was also ascribed to pilot suicide, although the Chinese authorities have never publicly announced it. But we as aviators know that that's what was behind it. And unfortunately, a couple of other incidents too. So, yes, it's a shocking thing when a pilot flies a plane purposefully into a mountain, which is what Lubitz did. But the testing of pilots has changed significantly since then, psychologically. So we tend to catch more of those kind of people earlier, which I hope that makes you feel better. And the second thing is that the tests, the aviation annual exams and tests we have, a lot of it now these days is around psychological testing. You spend some time with the aviation doctor who gets to know you, asking questions about your mindset.
But perhaps delve deeper into that kind of testing. Is it really very rigorous? Because one would think if it's a conversation where, yes, it's a professional, most of them would know to prep themselves because it would be career limiting if anything were to come out of that type of a conversation with a psychologist. So just take us through the process itself. What exactly do they look out for?
Well, there's a number of layers here we need to address first. It's not just the doctor, it's the fellow pilots. And I'd say 10 or 15 years ago, there was a culture in pilots, a laddish boys kind of culture where men are men and horses are scared, that kind of lunatic fringe of macho pilots who believed that they could drink and fly, for example, take drugs and fly. And that has kind of been eradicated from the industry largely. So the pilots themselves are highly aware of the critical element. It's called cockpit or crew resource management, CRM, which has now come to the fore and has become an airline transport subject.
There have been reports that in most instances you would have a number of pilots that would probably be suffering from depression or bipolar, but would not want to take medication because they know that the minute they would take medication for any of these type of mental illnesses, then they would probably have to leave their job. How prevalent is this thing, or have you in fact heard of it?
So can you repeat that? I'm afraid my internet just blipped. I'm in Australia talking to you, and I'm afraid I'm on very slow internet here, so apologies. Slower than what I'm used to in South Africa, bizarrely.
Not a problem, Desmond. I'm saying there have been reports that there are a number of pilots who possibly suffer from depression or bipolar, but refuse to be diagnosed per se. They probably confided in their colleagues, refuse to be diagnosed or even take medication, because the minute they start to take medication, they'd have to be laid off.
Yes, I mean, it's a significant threat to our industry. It's a very challenging industry. The failure rate is high when it comes to the exams. The pressure on you is about the same as chartered accountants in terms of the strict adherence to, the pass rate for exams is 75%. And as we jokingly say, I mean, you want a pilot to land the plane properly 75% of the time. No, it's 100%. So you're always trying to achieve 100%, and humans are humans. So there's a huge amount of stress on individuals about this. And there has been an attempt over the years in the past, as I said, in the decades past, the 70s and the 80s, as aviation developed, there was an attempt to obfuscate this. You know, men are not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to have problems, you're supposed to defeat the problems. But with the number of women and the diversity in the cockpit or the flight deck now, people, South Africans, more diverse cockpit. You're having an effect where people are kind of more free to express themselves, and the pilots themselves are supposed to self-report, but they don't, as you say, because it immediately leads to an effect. However, I must tell you one thing, that it's proven in international and IATA rules and regulations and through Federal Aviation America testing that pilots who do come forward and change from alcoholics, for example, there's a couple of really good cases, are treated really well by the industry, because it's a multi-million-dollar loss for a pilot. Your career goes up in flames. It's not just the emotional effect or your pride or whatever else. It's your entire, you're professional and you earn a lot of money out of flying. So it's a big motivation to deal with it. So what we're finding is that pilots who actually come forward early are treated with respect now, and are put in a situation where they are trusted more, because everyone has an issue. So if you meet pilots who never have a problem, then it means that they're going to have a problem at some point. You need to be able to say what your weaknesses are. And much of the industry is based on not making a mistake. So pilots don't like to say that they made a mistake, which of course is the first thing you have to say as a good aviator, is you're never good, you're always trying to get better.
Well, it's great that the profession now allows for them to come forward if they have problems or have made mistakes. But if we had to just zero in on this particular incident where this British Airways pilot decided to brag to a colleague that he was actually high and about to fly the plane. Of course, he's been fired now. But in such instances on a day-to-day, would a pilot be tested? Because one assumes, just like in my line of work, if you were to come in and somebody in any environment is on drugs, how do we tell? How do we tell?
Well, I mean, one of the things, you get to know your colleagues, and you very quickly identify from people around you the ones who look like they've had a big party over the last couple of days. And so that's the first thing, is the cabin crew, for example. There's, in international flights, there's 10 or 12 cabin crew. They watch the pilots go past. The airline's check-in process, part of that is to check on the pilots. The captain, who's in charge, is supposed to check the pilots for precisely this fact. There's a quarter bottle to throttle logic here, which is 8 hours, which means that you're not allowed to drink within 8 hours of flying. But British Airways actually has a 12-hour rule about bottle to throttle, and no drug at all, apart from alcohol. You can consume alcohol in a moderate way. But any other drug, if it's found in your urine, which we have tests, or your blood, you will lose your license, and you'll have to have some kind of rectification process begin. So that's my answer to you, is that your peers are watching you. Very seldom, and this case is a 34-year-old pilot. 34-year-old pilots, young males, are a nightmare to deal with. That's one of the reasons why our insurance on young male drivers is much higher than young female drivers, because they're like young zebras. They want to go and show off to the herd. So they're always doing stuff like this. So unfortunately, you've got that situation where you, in the captain's seat, he's the first officer, the captain's seat on the left. That person normally, if you look at the four yellow stripes, that person, have a look at them next time you go in the airport. See who's got the 4 stripes, what they look like. They look in their 50s for a reason. They've got 5, 6, 7, 8,000 hours. They've been flying for 15 years. The person with the 3 yellow is the first officer, less experienced. Those are the 30-year-olds. These are the people who still want to become the captain. And there's a saying in our industry, there are old pilots and there are bold pilots, but there are no old, bold pilots. Because the more extreme and the more egotistical you are as a pilot, the shorter your lifespan is, unfortunately. So all of that means that we tend to police ourselves. You say that's not good enough, but it's like saying, well, you have to then get every single driver before they go on the road to be checked. So I think in the future there will be some kind of move towards a more general test. But at the moment, what's happening is people check on each other.